She defeated an army without firing a shot. The Gorvalaxian warship Impenetrable Virtue hung in orbit around the small, blue-green world like an angry hornet's nest made of titanium and spite. Its jagged, asymmetrical design, all angles and protruding weapons arrays, had been specifically engineered to inspire terror in anyone unfortunate enough to glimpse it through a viewport. Admiral Zex'Kalador stood on the command bridge, his forearms folded in the traditional posture of impending conquest, while his secondary breathing gills fluttered with barely contained excitement. "Tactical assessment?" he demanded, his voice a gravelly rumble that seemed to vibrate through the metal deck plates. Lieutenant Commander Vixthar approached, her exoskeleton clicking faintly as she consulted her datapad. "The human outpost appears largely undefended, Admiral. Preliminary scans show minimal weapons capabilities and only one life form present." "One?" Zex'Kalador's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary set swiveled in disbelief. "Verify your readings, Commander." "Confirmed, sir. One human female occupies the station. No reinforcements within 17 parsecs." The Admiral's mouth tentacles writhed in what passed for a smile among his species. "Perfect. The Planetary Acquisition Corps will be most pleased. This world's abundant water resources will fuel our fleet for decades." Vixthar hesitated, her mandibles twitching in what her commander recognized as concern. "Sir, there is one anomaly. Our sensors detect unusual energy signatures emanating from the station. Nothing weaponized, but patterns we cannot identify." "Irrelevant," Zex'Kalador dismissed with a wave of his upper right arm. "Prepare the landing party. I shall lead personally." "But Admiral, protocol dictates—" "I will not be denied the glory of claiming this world," he interrupted. "The High Command expects results and I shall deliver them. Besides," he added, his voice dropping to an amused gurgle, "I wish to see the face of this lone human when she realizes her planet now belongs to the Gorvalaxian Empire." Down on the planet's surface, Dr. Ellie Chen was having what she considered to be a perfectly reasonable Wednesday morning. She'd woken at 7:30, made herself a cup of strong black coffee, and settled in for another day of managing Outpost Theta, Earth's farthest and most isolated research station. "Another day in paradise," she muttered to herself as she squinted at the communications console, which was, as usual, flashing with an urgent message from Earth Command. She tapped the screen with a fingernail painted electric blue and sighed at the familiar face of Colonel Harrison. "Chen, why haven't you responded to our last 17 communications?" His face was its usual shade of administrative red. Ellie shrugged, taking a sip of coffee. "Been busy. You know how it is out here. Plants to water, data to analyze, existential crises to have while staring into the void of space." Colonel Harrison's eye twitched. "This isn't a joke, Doctor. We've detected an unidentified spacecraft entering your sector. You need to—" The transmission dissolved into static, and Ellie raised an eyebrow. "Need to what? File a report? Make myself presentable for the aliens?" She tapped the console a few times, but the connection remained dead. With a philosophical shrug, she spun her chair around to face the large observation window, just in time to see a sleek predatory shuttle descending toward the landing pad outside. "Huh," she said, draining her coffee. "Guess I should put on pants." By the time Admiral Zex'Kalador and his elite squad of 6 warriors had disembarked, pressurized their atmosphere suits and formed a menacing phalanx outside the station's main airlock, Ellie had indeed put on pants. She'd also tied her long black hair into a messy bun, found her second-best lab coat, and scrounged up a half-eaten package of cookies from beneath a stack of research notes. The station's external camera showed the aliens, tall, chitinous, creatures with multiple limbs and what appeared to be rather elaborate helmets, arranged in formation. One of them, slightly taller and considerably more decorated than the others, was gesturing impatiently at the airlock. "Guess that's my cue," Ellie murmured. She pressed the external communications button. "Hi there, give me just a second. This door sticks sometimes." After a moment of fumbling with the manual override, the airlock cycled open, and Ellie stood face to face with the invading force. She offered a friendly wave. The lead alien drew himself up to his full height, nearly 7 feet, and spoke, his translator rendering his words into slightly mechanical English. I am Admiral Zex'Kalador of the Gorvalaxian Empire. This planet is now under our control. Surrender immediately, or face annihilation. Ellie blinked. Wow, okay. That's direct. She glanced past him at the imposing shuttle and the even more imposing warship visible in the sky above. Would you like to come in? I just made coffee. The Admiral's translator must have struggled with this response, because he stood motionless for several seconds before his secondary eyes blinked rapidly, in sequence. You offer refreshments? To your conquerors? Well, it seemed rude not to, Ellie replied. Besides, if we're going to discuss planetary surrender, we might as well be comfortable, right? Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked back into the station. After a moment of confused hesitation, Zex'Kalador signaled to his warriors, and they cautiously followed. The interior of Outpost Theta was not what the Gorvalaxian invasion force had expected. Rather than the sterile, militaristic environment typical of strategic installations, they found themselves in what appeared to be a combination of laboratory, living quarters, and what the Admiral's cultural database identified as a college dormitory. Plants of various species grew in containers along the walls. Screens displayed complex data readouts next to pictures of cats wearing humorous headgear. Clothing items were draped over chairs, and scientific equipment shared table space with empty food containers. Welcome to Outpost Theta, Ellie said, gesturing vaguely around the room. Sorry about the mess, wasn't expecting company from another planet today. Admiral Zex'Kalador remained standing rigidly near the airlock, his warriors fanned out in defensive positions. Human female, you seem to misunderstand the gravity of your situation. We are not visitors. We are here to claim this world for the glory of the Gorvalaxian Empire. Yeah, I got that part. Ellie nodded, rummaging through a cabinet. I'm Ellie, by the way. Dr. Ellie Chen. I run this place. Well, run might be a strong word. I mostly just make sure nothing explodes or evolves sentience when it shouldn't. She emerged with a stack of mismatched mugs. So, how do you guys take your coffee? I've got sugar and some powdered creamer that's probably still good. Lieutenant Commander Vixithar moved closer to the Admiral, speaking quietly. Sir, our intelligence indicates that humans often use hospitality as a delaying tactic. She may be attempting to stall until reinforcements arrive. Zex'Kalador's gills fluttered in agreement. Human, he barked. We will not participate in your primitive social rituals. You will immediately surrender control of this facility's systems and provide the access codes to Earth's defense networks. Ellie paused, a spoonful of coffee grounds suspended over a filter. Defense networks? Oh, you think this is some kind of military outpost? She laughed. No. This is a research station. We study exobiology and atmospheric composition. The most dangerous thing here is the mold growing in the refrigerator. The Admiral's upper arms twitched in what might have been confusion. Our intelligence clearly indicated this was a strategic installation. Your intelligence needs better glasses, Ellie replied, turning on the coffee maker. I mean, look around. Does this look like a military base to you? The warriors glanced uncertainly at the cluttered room, the potted plants, and the wall covered in what appeared to be hand-drawn cartoons, featuring a stick figure labeled Ellie, having various misadventures in space. Nevertheless, Zex'Kalador continued, this planet has been designated for acquisition. Its water resources are necessary for the expansion of our empire. Water? Ellie raised her eyebrows. Is that what this is about? You guys need water? The Gorvalaxian Empire requires vast quantities of H2O for our propulsion systems and biological sustenance, the Admiral explained stiffly. Your oceans will serve our needs for approximately 73 of your Earth years. Huh. Ellie leaned against the counter as the coffee machine gurgled behind her. And for this, you're planning to, what, conquer Earth? Kill everyone? Seems a bit extreme when you could just ask nicely. Admiral Zex'Kalador's mouth tentacles twitched in what might have been amusement or contempt. The Gorvalaxian Empire does not ask. We take what we require. Right, Ellie nodded. How's that working out for you guys? Making lots of friends in the galaxy? Before the Admiral could respond, the coffee maker beeped. Ellie turned to pour herself a cup, seemingly unconcerned about turning her back on 7 heavily armed aliens. Are you sure you don't want some? It's not great coffee, but it's caffeinated. Or I could offer you water since you're apparently traveling the galaxy to get some. Zex'Kalador felt his patience waning. This human, female, was not responding with the appropriate terror, and her casual demeanor was making his warriors restless. He gestured to 2 of them. Secure the communications array. Lieutenant Commander, scan the facility for weapons or hidden personnel. You won't find any weapons, Ellie said, blowing on her coffee. Unless you count the potato peeler, which is technically sharp but mostly just annoying to use. She watched with mild interest as the aliens began moving through her living space. Hey, careful with that. It's my sourdough starter. I've been keeping it alive for 3 years. The warrior, who had been about to examine the mysterious bubbling container, quickly withdrew its appendage. So, Ellie continued conversationally, the Gorvalaxian Empire. Can't say I've heard of you guys before. What's your deal, besides the whole conquering planets for water thing? Admiral Zex'Kalador found himself increasingly unsettled by the humans' behavior. In his extensive career subjugating various species, he had encountered terror, resistance, pleading, and occasionally resigned acceptance. He had never faced someone who offered him coffee and asked about his culture while being invaded. The Gorvalaxian Empire spans 27 star systems, he found himself explaining. Our civilization has existed for over 12,000 of your Earth years. We are warriors, conquerors, and the supreme military force in this quadrant of the galaxy. Cool, Ellie nodded. And the, exoskeleton situation? Is that natural or some kind of armor? It is both, the Admiral replied, slightly affronted. Our external carapaces are biologically generated but enhanced with metallurgical treatments during our maturation ceremony. Fascinating, Ellie said, and she appeared genuinely interested. Is it a painful process? The metallurgical enhancement, I mean. It is. Uncomfortable, Zex'Kalador admitted. But the pain is an honor. It signifies our transition to adulthood and our commitment to the Empire. Lieutenant Commander Vixthar returned from her inspection of the facility's far rooms. Admiral, I have completed my scan. There are no weapons, no hidden personnel, and no communication devices beyond the main console, which has been disabled as ordered. What about the anomalous energy readings? The Admiral demanded. Vixthar's mandibles clicked uncertainly. The source appears to be that room. She pointed to a door marked Lab 2, Keep Out. This means you, Colonel Harrison. Ah, Ellie said, suddenly looking slightly uncomfortable. That's just my personal project. Nothing interesting, really. Just some experiments with, plant growth. Very boring stuff. Admiral Zex'Kalador's 4 eyes focused intently on the human. For the first time, she appeared nervous. Open it, he ordered. Ellie hesitated, clutching her coffee mug. Look, it's really not relevant to your whole conquest thing. Why don't we talk more about this water situation? I'm sure we could work out some kind of arrangement that doesn't involve planetary subjugation. Open the room, the Admiral repeated, or we will destroy it and everything inside. With a sigh, Ellie set down her mug. Fine, but I'm warning you, it's messy in there. And, scientific. Very scientific. Probably won't make sense to you military types. She led the way to the door, tapped a code into the keypad, and stepped back as it slid open. Inside was a laboratory space considerably more organized than the rest of the outpost. Complex equipment lined the walls, and in the center of the room stood what appeared to be a large cylindrical chamber, connected to various monitoring devices. What is this technology? Admiral Zex'Kalador demanded, his gill flaps extending in alarm. It's nothing, really, Ellie said too quickly. Just a little something I've been tinkering with. Atmospheric recombination, molecular restructuring, hobby stuff. The Admiral gestured to one of his warriors. Scan it. The warrior approached the chamber, raised a handheld device, and swept it across the equipment. After a moment, he turned back to his commander, his posture conveying confusion. "Sir, it appears to be. I cannot identify the purpose, but it is generating the unusual energy signature we detected from orbit." Zex'Kalador turned his primary eyes on Ellie. "Explain this device. Now." Ellie rubbed the back of her neck. "Would you believe it's a really fancy coffee maker?" "The human attempts deception," Vixthar hissed. "This technology does not match any known Earth design in our database." "Yeah, well, that's because I invented it," Ellie admitted. "Look, it's really not a weapon or anything. It's just a pet project I've been working on. Earth Command doesn't even know about it." The Admiral moved closer to the chamber, his multiple limbs tense with suspicion. "If it is not a weapon, then what is its purpose?" Ellie sighed. "It's a matter converter. It takes one substance and transforms it into another by rearranging its molecular structure. I was trying to solve our supply problem out here. You know, turn the abundant stuff into the rare stuff we need." "That is impossible," Vixthar said, but her voice held a note of uncertainty. "Not impossible," Ellie corrected. "Just really, really difficult and probably a violation of several laws of physics. But I got bored and there's not much else to do out here except watch the stars and talk to my plants." Admiral Zex'Kalador's secondary eyes narrowed. "If what you claim is true, this technology would be of immense value to the Gorvalaxian Empire." "I suppose it would," Ellie agreed, "if it worked properly, which it doesn't yet." "Demonstrate," the Admiral commanded. Ellie hesitated, then shrugged. "Your funeral." She moved to a control panel and began tapping commands. "What would you like to see it try to convert? I've had the best results with simple transformations. Carbon to oxygen, that sort of thing." Before the Admiral could respond, Lieutenant Commander Vixthar interjected. "Sir, if this device functions as she claims, it could potentially create water from abundant elements." Zex'Kalador's mouth tentacles writhed with sudden interest. "Is this true, human? Could your machine create water?" "In theory," Ellie said, cautiously. "I haven't tried that specific conversion yet, but the principles should be similar. You'd need hydrogen and oxygen, obviously, which are among the most common elements in the universe," the Admiral finished, his voice vibrating with growing excitement. "Show us." Ellie looked uncertain. "I should warn you, the process isn't exactly stable. There's a reason I keep this behind a locked door." "Proceed," Zex'Kalador insisted. With a deep breath, Ellie turned to her equipment. "All right, but everyone should step back and maybe put on safety goggles. Does your fancy armor protect your eyes? Never mind, just stand back." The Gorvalaxian warriors took positions around the laboratory as Ellie worked at the control panel. The cylindrical chamber began to hum, its interior illuminating with a soft blue glow. Displays flickered with data as Ellie's fingers flew across the interface. "Okay," she murmured. "Taking atmospheric components, isolating hydrogen and oxygen, setting recombination parameters, initiating molecular binding sequence." The humming intensified, and the blue glow within the chamber pulsed rhythmically. The Gorvalaxians watched in fascinated silence as Ellie continued to make adjustments, her face illuminated by the screens before her. "Almost there," she said, more to herself than her audience. "Just need to stabilize the reaction and—" A sudden flash of light erupted from the chamber, followed by a sharp cracking sound. The humming stopped abruptly, and a thin wisp of smoke rose from one of the control panels. Ellie winced. "Oops." "What happened?" Admiral Zex'Kalador demanded, his multiple limbs twitching in alarm. "Minor calibration issue," Ellie said quickly, tapping commands into a secondary console. "Nothing to worry about. Just a small overload in the conversion matrix. Give me a minute to reset." As she worked, a small indicator light on the side of the chamber turned from red to green, and a panel slid open. Inside, a shallow pool of clear liquid had formed at the bottom of the chamber. "There we go," Ellie said, gesturing to the result. "Water. Not much, but it's a start." Admiral Zex'Kalador approached cautiously, his secondary eyes fixed on the small amount of liquid. Verify, he ordered one of his warriors. The warrior stepped forward with a scanning device, analyzed the substance, and turned back to his commander. It is H2O, Admiral. Pure water. A strange sound emanated from the Admiral, something between a hiss and a gurgle that Ellie realized might be the Gorvalaxian equivalent of astonished laughter. Do you understand what this means? He asked, turning to Lieutenant Commander Zex'Kalador. With this technology, we would no longer need to conquer water-rich worlds. We could create our own supply from the elements available throughout space. It would transform our expansion strategy. Zex'Kalador agreed, her mandibles clicking rapidly in what Ellie guessed was excitement. Human, the Admiral said, turning all four of his eyes toward Ellie. You will provide us with the specifications for this device and accompany us back to Gorvalax Prime to assist our scientists in developing it further. Ellie raised her eyebrows. So we've moved from surrender or die to pack your bags. You're coming with us. That's progress, I guess. But I'm still not loving the options. You do not understand, Zex'Kalador said, his voice taking on an almost reverential quality. You would be honored beyond any human in history. You would have wealth, status, your own research facility. And just a teeny bit of captivity. Ellie interrupted. Look, I appreciate the offer, but I'm pretty attached to Earth. All my stuff is here. My family. My cat, my cat's with my sister, but you get the idea. The Admiral's posture stiffened. This is not a request, human. The technology is too valuable to leave in the hands of an underdeveloped species. Underdeveloped? Ellie crossed her arms. Says the guy who flies across the galaxy stealing water instead of just making it. Sir, Zex'Kalador interjected before the Admiral could respond to this insult. Perhaps we could negotiate a more mutually beneficial arrangement. The human might be more cooperative if allowed to remain connected to her world. Zex'Kalador's gill flaps fluttered as he considered this. What do you propose, human? What would secure your willing cooperation? Ellie tilted her head thoughtfully. Well, for starters, a promise not to invade Earth would be nice. And maybe some kind of cultural exchange program. I share my technology, you share yours. Plus, I'd need guarantees that the water converter wouldn't be used for military applications. The Gorvalaxian Empire does not make such concessions, the Admiral began, but then he paused, his secondary eyes blinking in sequence as he reconsidered. However, these are unprecedented circumstances. Your technology could end resource conflicts across our territories. Exactly, Ellie nodded encouragingly. Think of it as a peacemaking opportunity. You guys get to be the heroes who solve the water crisis instead of the conquerors who take it by force. The Admiral and Lieutenant Commander exchanged looks, communicating in some subtle way that Ellie couldn't interpret. Finally, Zex'Kalador spoke. We will consider your proposal. In the meantime, you will provide a demonstration of a larger-scale conversion to prove the technology's viability. Fair enough, Ellie agreed. But I'll need some time to recalibrate the system for a bigger batch. The molecular stabilization gets tricky at larger volumes. How much time? The Admiral demanded. A few hours? Ellie estimated. Maybe less if your guys can help me with some of the heavy lifting. Those hydrogen canisters aren't getting any lighter. Zex'Kalador nodded, curtly. You will have 3 of your Earth hours. Lieutenant Commander Zex'Kalador will remain to observe and assist. The rest of us will return to the impenetrable virtue to consult with High Command regarding your proposal. Great, Ellie said with a forced smile. It'll be like a little science playdate. The Admiral's mouth tentacles writhed in what might have been disgust or confusion at her terminology. He turned to Zex'Kalador. Maintain constant communication. If she attempts any deception or sabotage, alert me immediately. Yes, Admiral, Zex'Kalador responded with a formal gesture that involved crossing her lower arms while extending her upper ones. As the Admiral and most of his warriors filed out of the laboratory, Ellie turned to her new alien lab assistant. So, how are you with quantum calibration algorithms? Aboard the impenetrable Virtue, Admiral Zex'Kalador stood before the holographic projection of Grand Marshal Kravtsar, Supreme Commander of the Gorvalaxian Armada. The Grand Marshal's imposing form, nearly twice the size of the Admiral's width. A carapace bearing the scars of countless battles dominated the communication chamber. You allowed a single human female to halt our invasion? The Grand Marshal's voice was like granite being crushed. With respect, Grand Marshal, Zex'Kalador replied, keeping his posture rigidly formal. This human possesses technology that could eliminate our need for planetary water acquisition entirely. The strategic advantages. I am well aware of the strategic implications, Kravtsar interrupted. What concerns me is your willingness to negotiate with an inferior species, rather than simply taking what we need. The technology is complex, sir. Without her cooperation, our scientists might spend decades attempting to reverse engineer it. With her assistance, we could implement it across the fleet within a single cycle. The Grand Marshal's primary eyes narrowed to slits. And you believe this human will simply hand over this revolutionary technology in exchange for peace? She appears unusually cooperative, the Admiral admitted. Not typical of the human resistance profiles in our database. Which should immediately raise your suspicions, Admiral, Kravtsar growled. No species willingly shares technology that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. I have taken precautions, Zex'Kalador assured him. Lieutenant Commander Vixthar is monitoring her closely, and I've dispatched our technical specialist, Drexmore, to verify the authenticity of the conversion process. The Grand Marshal was silent for a moment, his gill flaps pulsing slowly as he considered. Very well. I will allow this approach to continue, but only until the demonstration is complete. If the technology proves viable, secure both it and the human. If not, resume the original invasion plan immediately. Understood, Grand Marshal. And Zex'Kalador, Kravtsar added, his voice dropping to a threatening rumble. Do not allow yourself to be manipulated by this human. Our intelligence indicates that despite their physical weaknesses, humans can be dangerously persuasive. I assure you, Grand Marshal, I am immune to human manipulation tactics. As the hologram flickered out, Admiral Zex'Kalador felt a twinge of unease. The human's behavior continued to perplex him. She had shown no fear, offered minimal resistance, and seemed almost amused by the whole situation. It was not the reaction one expected when facing the might of the Gorvalaxian Empire. Perhaps the Grand Marshal was right to be suspicious. Back at Outpost Theta, Ellie and Lieutenant Commander Vixthar had established an unexpected rhythm in their work. Despite their obvious differences, one a human scientist with a casual approach to laboratory protocol, the other a rigid alien warrior with mandibles that clicked disapprovingly at Ellie's methods, they had made considerable progress on expanding the matter converter's capacity. Hand me that molecular resonator, Ellie said, pointing to a device that looked something like a chrome egg beater with extra buttons. Vixthar passed it over, her exoskeleton creaking slightly as she reached. Your approach to calibration is unorthodox. That's a polite way of saying I have no idea what I'm doing, right? Ellie grinned as she adjusted something inside the cylindrical chamber. I did not say that, Vixthar replied carefully. Merely that your methods do not follow any scientific protocol I recognize. That's because I'm making it up as I go, Ellie admitted cheerfully. Half of these components weren't designed for this purpose. I had to repurpose equipment from other experiments. The lieutenant commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. You created a matter conversion device from spare parts? Necessity is the mother of invention, Ellie shrugged. Also boredom. Mostly boredom, if I'm being honest. Do you have any idea how quiet it gets out here? Vixthar observed the human with what might have been newfound respect. On Gorvalax, such innovation would earn you a position in the Imperial Science Division. Is that a good thing? Ellie asked, glancing up from her work. It is the highest honor a non-warrior can achieve, Vixthar explained. Our scientists are afforded special privileges, including immunity from the mandatory military service that all other citizens must perform. Sounds intense, Ellie commented. So everyone on your planet is either a soldier or a scientist? There are also laborers, administrators, and reproductive specialists, Vixthar clarified. But yes, our society is structured around military and scientific advancement, All serve the Empire in their designated capacity. And what if someone wants to be something else, Ellie asked, connecting two components with a thin silver wire? Like an artist or a musician or just, I don't know, a person who grows plants and looks at the stars? Vixthar seemed genuinely confused by the question. Why would anyone wish for such purposeless existence? Because it makes them happy? Ellie suggested. Happiness is irrelevant, Vixthar stated flatly. Purpose is what gives meaning to life. Ellie paused in her work, looking thoughtfully at the alien. And your purpose is conquering planets for their resources? My purpose is to serve the Empire, Vixthar corrected. Currently, that service takes the form of planetary acquisition. In the future, it may take another form. Huh? Ellie nodded slowly. You know, that doesn't sound all that different from how some people think on Earth. Follow orders, don't ask questions, do your duty. Never really worked for me, though. Which explains why you are alone on a remote outpost, Vixthar observed. Ellie laughed. Touché. But I'm here by choice, not assignment. I like the solitude. Gives me space to think without someone looking over my shoulder telling me I'm doing it wrong. Yet you have accomplished something our entire scientific community has not achieved, Vixthar said, gesturing to the matter converter. Perhaps there is value in your unconventional approach. Before Ellie could respond, the laboratory door slid open to admit a new Gorvalaxian, one she hadn't seen before. This one was smaller than the warriors, with an exoskeleton that seemed less militaristic and more functional, covered in what appeared to be tool pouches and sensor arrays. Dr. Chen, this is Technical Specialist Drexmore, Vixthar introduced. He has been sent by Admiral Zex'Kalador to verify your technology. Hi there. Ellie nodded to the newcomer. Perfect timing. We're almost ready for the larger demonstration. Drexmore approached the equipment, his movements more precise and delicate than the warriors. His secondary eyes swiveled independently, examining different components simultaneously. Fascinating construction, he commented, his translator, rendering his voice with a higher pitch than the others. You've repurposed a standard molecular analyzer as a recombination chamber. Ingenious. Thanks, Ellie said, genuinely pleased by the recognition. I had to get creative with the parts I had available. The emergency shipments from Earth rarely contain cutting-edge scientific equipment, Vixthar explained to her compatriot. Dr. Chen has been working with limited resources, which makes this achievement even more remarkable, Drexmore noted, continuing his inspection. Though I notice several potential instability points in your configuration. Ellie nodded. Yeah, the power regulation is tricky. I've had to reroute through multiple stabilizers to prevent overloads. Perhaps a quantum buffer between these junctions, Drexmore suggested, pointing to a particular connection. I tried that, Ellie said, but it created too much resistance. The conversion process needs rapid energy transfer at key moments. Ah, I see the problem, the technical specialist murmured, his appendages moving quickly as he examined the system more closely. You're attempting to manage the energy spikes rather than channel them. As the two scientists fell into technical discussion, Lieutenant Commander Vixthar stood back, watching with growing interest as her people's supposed enemy and her compatriot began collaborating like colleagues who had worked together for years. This was not how planetary conquests typically proceeded. Admiral Zex'Kalador paced the command bridge of the impenetrable virtue, his multiple limbs clasped behind his back in a posture that his crew recognized as dangerous impatience. The 3-hour deadline was approaching, and he had received only brief updates from Lieutenant Commander Vixthar, each more puzzling than the last. Status report, he barked at the communications officer. Still awaiting final confirmation. From the surface team, Admiral, the officer replied. Last transmission indicated that technical specialist Drexmore was assisting the human with final calibrations. Assisting? Zex'Kalador repeated, his gill flaps flaring. He was sent to verify, not collaborate. Before the officer could respond, the communications console chimed. Incoming transmission from Outpost Theta, sir. Display, the Admiral ordered. The main view screen activated to show Lieutenant Commander Vixthar standing in the humans' laboratory. Behind her, Ellie and Drexmore could be seen making final adjustments to the cylindrical chamber, which now appeared significantly modified, with additional components and a larger reservoir attached to its base. "Report, Commander," Zex'Kalador demanded. "Admiral," Vixthar began, her posture formally respectful. "Technical specialist Drexmore has verified that the human's technology is genuine. The matter conversion principles are sound, though the implementation is unorthodox." "Unorthodox how?" "The human has created a functional system using components never designed for this purpose," Vixthar explained. "Drexmore believes this may actually be advantageous, as it would make the technology difficult for our enemies to reproduce even if they obtained the specifications." The Admiral's secondary eyes narrowed. "And the demonstration?" "Prepared and ready, sir," Vixthar confirmed. "The human has expanded the system's capacity as requested. Drexmore estimates it can now produce approximately 50 gallons of water per cycle." 50 gallons? Zex'Kalador's voice carried a note of disappointment. "That is hardly sufficient for our needs." From somewhere off-screen, Ellie's voice called out, "It's a prototype. You can't expect industrial capacity from a setup I built in my spare time with spare parts?" The Admiral's mouth tentacles writhed in annoyance. "Bring the human into view." The image shifted, and Ellie appeared beside Vixthar, wiping her hands on a rag. Her lab coat was smudged with something that looked like grease, and her hair had partially escaped its bun to frame her face in unruly strands. "Hi, Admiral," she said with a casual wave. "We're just about ready for the big show. Your tech guy's been..."